All right, I want to welcome on my next guest. We've got recurring guests. We've got Dave Dameshek, co-host. I think I got it this time. -3 podcast, Extra Points Podcast Network, and it looks like you're in Cleveland at the draft. How's everything going for you?
Yes, well, yeah, that's I had that made to remember the glorious
Okay.
time in Cleveland, Ohio. The first human being ever to have a glorious time there, by the by. Yeah, listen, nice to be back with you, but to the matter at hand, before we talk draft or otherwise, behind you, I see you have Cousin Sal's book there. Cousin Sal has been on the show, so the question is, who do you like better now, me or Cousin Sal?
You haven't sent me a book.
Okay, but
Yeah,
but I'm the one speaking to you right
it's
now,
true. It's
so
true. Yeah.
that makes it interesting. I feel.
Yeah. No, yeah. So I want to ask your thoughts on the draft. How do you think it went this past weekend?
I'm trying to think. Outside of the Raiders, I guess I don't think there were any major surprises. I guess the one that I would point to as the biggest surprise is, if you had no context for this, would be the Broncos, who need a QB, passing on Justin Fields sitting there and Mac Jones sitting there for that matter. But reading the tea leaves there, it's funny. Everybody's doing this like, well, so what's going to go on with Aaron Rodgers? Do you think he goes back? It seems abundantly clear. I have no special insight on this, but it seems pretty clear that it's reported by somebody very close in the Broncos organization, Mark Schlereth, saying a deal is in place as much as a deal can be in place. And we know that it's a much bigger financial hit to the Packers if they trade him before June 1st. And then the Broncos get to that ninth spot and they take a cornerback in a division that includes Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. This all adds up to me to be fairly obvious that the Broncos are going to wind up with him, or they've really messed up big, because they should have taken, in my opinion, Justin Fields, if they don't think that they're winding up with Aaron Rodgers on the other side. And the big winners from that, if you wind up Mahomes and Rodgers and Herbert in that division,
And
egad.
Nathan Peterman. And Nathan Peterman.
And Nate Pete, yeah, good, touche. Yeah, you got them all. You covered all the big names there. So I think that that's interesting. And as a side note to that, I also think the Eagles are a little bit too excited about Jalen Hurts. I understand self-validation and otherwise, but I think that they're going to lament not having taken Justin Fields with him sitting there as well.
My main takeaway from the whole weekend was how many people sat in Goodell's chair. Because
Yeah, I didn't get that bit.
now it's the first round. I'm like, all right, you get 32 people, but if you get 300 people sitting in the chair, now you got to burn it now. And then what was the band that performed in the first round? Kings of Leon.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they were out there for like 3 hours just taking requests. It was like a big bar mitzvah they were just doing and just singing their songs from 2008.
Yeah,
But
it was. Yeah, the chair thing, I'm under sort of complained about aspect of our society's restaurants. I always say this. It's like, you want to feel clean. You want to
yeah,
feel like you're the first one to sit in a chair. And when the restaurant closes every night, what do to mop the floors? They take the chairs and they put them on the table where you eat your food, but the butt side of the chair is on the table where my food's going to go tomorrow when I come to your restaurant. That's disgusting. We'd have to do something about
yeah.
that.
No, and then on the Broncos, I saw a rumor on Reddit that I don't believe at all, but apparently Rodgers just purchased a house in Boulder.
Is that true?
I have no idea, but somebody claims.
Okay, well,
So
listen. Now let's
yeah,
let's assume it's fact. If it was on social media, then
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
right thing to do.
yeah. And then also, I don't know if you saw him at the Derby. Looks a little sickly.
Yeah, he's, some people, in our society where people work out a lot and everything, it's coveted to be thin, but it doesn't look good on everybody. Like the best example of that is Drew Carey. We knew him as a fat, and then he loses all that weight, and it's like, I'm sorry, it's not for everybody. Yes, it's fine to be your best self, but think of the rest of us. Some of us like to see you with a little bit of weight on you. And I think I don't think Aaron Rodgers needs to go up to 340 or anything, but I'd like to see him, get those rosier cheeks back there. Yeah, I'm with you. And plus, I don't know what Shailene Woodley's telling him, but the long hair ain't it, friend.
He looks like a wizard.
Mhm.
And at what point during the weekend or before the draft did you know Mac Jones is not being taken third? Because I had a kind of a hunch that early on, I thought it was I thought Fields was going three. So I was kind of surprised to see Lance go.
Had on extra points with Sal earlier in the week, had Michael Lombardi on, and he's pretty plugged
Yeah.
in with Belichick and with various organizations. And he says that he seems to really think that this is true. And if it is true, it's crazy. He thinks that Shanahan and company traded up to get Mac Jones at 3, but then the pushback that they got about there, you can't take Mac Jones at 3. They felt like this is too big a spot for the kid, that there'd be so much pressure on him, that they ended up going with Lance. That seems like some wild thinking there. But either way, I think they got it right. I don't think that yeah. I in the copycat league, you see Patrick Mahomes, who is being held up as the greatest to ever play the position. And you watch Trey Lance, guys, when they put their helmets on, certain guys physically become the doppelganger of other guys. And he seems like Patrick Mahomes 2.0. You see the way he moves and everything. It seems like it's not too big a leap that, like, hey, let's try to replicate the best in the biz there. So I think they wanted Trey Lance, but then again, we hear that they dabbled in Aaron Rodgers. Okay, maybe we could get Rodgers, and I suppose it's reasonable that it's fluid. That maybe they thought one thing around Christmas, and by the week before Cinco de Mayo that they had changed their opinion on that. But I got to think that they understand pedigree and skill set and ceiling and all that. And so I got to think they thought it was Lance, for the last several weeks or months even. But what do I know? The bottom line is I think they got it right. I guess we'll see.
And also want to ask you, are the Bengals trying to get Joe Burrow killed?
I don't, everybody keeps saying that. And I think if Pitts had gone to them, since everybody keeps talking about, like, he's matchup nightmare. That's one of our favorite phrases these days is he's a matchup nightmare. Well, Kyle Pitts is that. And if he had fallen to them, all these people pounding the table for Penei Sewell, like that's who they absolutely positively must take. It's like, I have no ability to assess how much better Penei Sewell is at leaning on other 300-pound men versus some of the other options that were out there at tackle in the draft. I do think that we know they already took Jonah Williams only 2 years ago. He's been injured and whatever, but by all reports, again, I don't assess how good an offensive lineman is. I defer to my expert pals on that, and they tell me he was looking better as the season went along. And then they added another tackle. So it's not like they're barren at the position to begin with. And it does in our fantasy football mindset that everybody kind of applies to these things. If the premise is in the short term that the Chiefs, and by the way, I think the Chargers are going to win the division in 2021, but either way,
you should bet that now.
Oh, I already have, bub. But let's say that what if Rodgers winds up with the Broncos and the Browns, as constituted, look top to bottom pretty loaded up there. And then you have the Ravens, who can be a juggernaut, and we'll see what becomes of Pittsburgh, and the Bills are mighty. I feel like, that goes out saying you need good offensive linemen and otherwise, but you also at some point need high pedigree guys to compete to win a shootout. That's where we've gotten now. It's not like if you're like, well, we shall zig against their zag and we will dominate them defensively. It just doesn't exist anymore. There's no such thing as a defense that holds opponents to under 2 touchdowns every week. I mean, everybody, like, you're going to be playing in the 20s or into the 30s in all likelihood. So you may as well accept that reality and try and keep up in the horse race. That's why they get a difference maker, presumably, in Chase to go along with Burrow. And by the way, as much as it matters, I don't know how much it matters. Aaron Rodgers is mad at the Packers because they didn't help him with the stuff he wanted helped with. Russell Wilson is mad at the Seahawks because they're not helping him on the offensive line. There are any number of these examples. I guess it's wise of the Bungles if Joey Burrow is saying like, he's my friend and I know he's good and we'll do good passing and catching to each other for the next decade. I guess it's like one for what it's worth. Yeah. The fringe benefit is you keep your presumed franchise QB happy.
You think the Steelers should have traded up for Mac Jones?
No, I don't think that would have been the answer there. I think that if it would have gotten to like, 15 or so or late teens, that then maybe you do start trying to think about like how much is it going to take for them to get Justin Fields. Personally, I don't know that Mac Jones is the answer. Now, a lot of the cools in the biz will tell you, oh, he's up, but I don't know how you would figure out what Tom Brady's mastery, which is elusive, is what he does pre-snap. When he looks up at the line and post-snap, he can deduce what's available to him. Like, I don't know how you would figure out that this kid, like, oh, he's as smart as Tom Brady. Like, based on what, like, how do you assess that he's going to perform at that level? I don't know. But anyway, no, I was fine. I know the rest of the world is upset with the Steelers for taking a running back, but specific to where they are, to the makeup of that team, if you accept the fact that they brought back shame the devil, they brought back their first ballot Hall of Fame QB to run it back one last time, I don't think it's a terrible crime to draft, again, a high pedigree running back who, like there's all these people are like, you got to take Penei Sewell, like tell me what the difference between Penei Sewell is and the fourth rated left tackle. These people who believe in their own brains that they can deduce or detect the drop off from Sewell to the fourth rated tackle are the same people who don't see a difference between Najee Harris and the fourth best running back. Like your math seems weird. You seem pretentious, and that's about it to me.
Washington got Cosme from Texas. We'll see how he does. And then you guys, so you all in on Haskins to take over for Roethlisberger?
Well, they brought Rudolph back. I don't know if you had right before or during the draft, even because it was such a splashy move that they wanted to make sure it got some major shine. But they signed Mason Rudolph. They extended him. This is his last year, if not. And so they brought him back. So I don't know. It's interesting. It seems like Tomlin, from the whispers you hear, liked him in advance, and I'm all about that. The 70s Raiders, Al Davis and John Madden, that they became known for taking guys off the scrap heap in the reclamation project. And in the 21st century, Belichick has done a fair amount of that. So may as well follow that lead and give it a shot. And if he doesn't work out, there's no major penalty for having done it to this point. There's no guarantee or no major financial hit for cutting him before the season. But it'd be cool if it worked out, that's for sure. And I know Jerome Bettis is saying it this week, but the idea that Roethlisberger, I'm a big believer in the cliff. I'm a big believer that when it goes for football guys, like it's not a gentle decline into the good night. It's like one day they're good, the next day they stink. And there are a lot of people, and I get it, who would watch Roethlisberger in December, this 21 or 20, and say, boy, he's fallen off the cliff. But if he plays well, we don't know here's a bit, the elbow, we don't know. His actual issue was throwing the deep ball last year. He was not as on the money as he has been, and he is one of the greats to do it in the Super Bowl era, specific to throwing the deep ball. But otherwise, he had plenty of zip on his passes and everything else. He's not moving in the pocket like prime Roethlisberger did. But how do we know, just as they always say about an ACL, like it's year 2 post-surgery that they're really back up to speed? I don't know enough about medicine to know, is his elbow going to be better in year 2 post-surgery? Maybe. But either way, if they protect him and the way they've put it together now, like what if it's a John Elway and Terrell Davis kind of effect, or what if they have a really good defense and they can take care of business and scratch out enough points like the 2015 Broncos can or did, and won the Super Bowl. What's to say Roethlisberger? He's not Brady's age. He's 39. He could conceivably run it back even in 2022 if it goes well enough.
Where do you see them placing in the division?
Right now, I like the Browns. I don't like the Browns, but and it's funny how thoroughly they've been able to hide their quarterback. We'll see, because I think everything's on him now. Everything's on Bake. Everything's set up. I do think top to bottom, you could make a pretty good case that that's the best roster in the AFC. The question is now the most important position in Baker. And is he going to consistently do it? Is he going to carry them? I mean, again, I have to point out, I know that the last memory everybody has is the one that they hold on to, and it was Baker Mayfield almost dumping the mighty Chiefs in Arrowhead. I also will refer you to 2 weeks before that game was played, 14 days before that game was played, maybe even 13. They were finally, everybody declared somewhere in December, like the Browns are finally about to go to the playoffs, and it's all but certain mathematically that they're going to go. And that was right week 14-ish or whatever. Like things would really have to go bad for them to not make the playoffs. All of a sudden, they get to week 17 in Cleveland, and all they have to do is win the game. And it's kind of gotten a little bit tight there. Like, oh, wow, okay, well, this shouldn't have come as close to us missing, but all we have to do now is beat the Steelers here. And they're sitting a bunch of their starters, including Ben Roethlisberger, and it's Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph missed on a 2-point conversion, and the Browns won that game by 2 points against Mason Rudolph's Steelers in a game that the Browns missed the playoffs if they don't win, and they barely survived Mason Rudolph's Steelers. Are we positive this team is great? Now, they've made some good additions in the offseason. So, long-winded answer. I still will go with the Browns, but I have my questions, obviously. They're still the Cleveland Browns until they won one game in Pittsburgh in a big spot. Good for them. That was a great seminal victory for their fan base and otherwise. Now, let's see them do it again. 1. And 2, I know there's a lot of hand-wringing about, the Steelers have screwed up by taking a running back and bringing back Roethlisberger and everything else. Here's my prediction for you. I don't know if it counts as a hot take. They'll finish ahead of the Ravens in the standings this year. That's my big prediction. Where's the concern? I guess you hear some from certain corners about Lamar Jackson's a running back. Obviously, those people don't know what they're talking about. But I do think that their front seven defensively is not fixed. It's old. Where's the pass rush definitely coming from? They need that pass rush. And they just signed Al Villanueva this week, and he was not good for the Steelers in 2020. And Ronnie Stanley coming back from a knee injury, Orlando Brown out. The offensive line matters more in Baltimore for what they want to do than it does in other places. And I feel like they took a step back with their offensive line, and at least for now, we'll see if they can add. I mean, there's some big name guys out there, name brand guys, and Justin Houston and Melvin Ingram, but they haven't signed any of those guys yet, at least at the time of this recording. So I have as many questions about the Ravens as I do the Steelers, but I do like what the Steelers did in the draft, and I do like the look of their defense, which 18 months ago almost made the playoffs with Duck Hodges playing quarterback.
Yeah, no, it's and then I want to ask you, Washington obviously didn't take a quarterback in the draft. You've got Fitzpatrick, who's 39. You basically have 3 backup quarterbacks on the roster. What do you see them doing for the future? Do you think they're just going to kind of ride it out this season? Because I don't think next draft is as kind of like top to bottom with quarterbacks. I think it's bring it down a little bit.
Well, if you keep in mind, if you're a Washington fan, first of all, we're not talking enough about how weird it is. Okay, they got finally there was enough noise for Dan Snyder to have to respond to it and say, fine, we won't use the name. We'll just be Washington this year. And it was kind of like an FU to the world to do that. Okay, it's a year later now. Are we really just going to just endlessly not give this team a name? Odd move. But I think that as so long as they only give out the one Lombardi every year, I think no offense to you or any Washington fan, the likelihood, in fact, this applies to 31 fan bases. the likelihood, or 32, the likelihood that your team is going to win the Super Bowl, the one Lombardi that they give out, is pretty slim. At least here, we can say before Memorial Day has even arrived, that you're going to have a fun season. Well, that's good. Congratulations, Washington. You got Fitzmagic to enjoy. You got what did I nickname them that then NBC picked up on? And they gave me no credit for it. They just said many people are calling it this. I am
what? Who?
Their front four, Maroon 4. I named them that, Maroon 4. That's mine. A lot of people didn't like it. And you know what I say to them? I don't care. You're just jealous because that's how clever I am that I came up with Maroon 4. But there's a lot of fun to be had with being a Washington fan this year with Fitzmagic. Yeah, you would like to have some guy who you're excited about, like maybe he's our guy, but that comes with a certain amount of stress, right? This will be a breezy year for you. There's always, I'm envious. I have to sweat it out every week now. Like, Dave, I said Roethlisberger would be fine, and if I'm wrong, then I have to wear it a little bit. Look at you. You get the world's your oyster. You just get to sit back, have a fun year with the guy with the beard, and he wears the chains and everything, and he's zany, and his teammates love him. It's going to be a fun year in our nation's capital.
Were you surprised they beat Pittsburgh? What was it, week 12?
Well, I was, on paper for sure, but that was in the window where everything kind of shifted, and Roethlisberger was not great in the ensuing couple of weeks after that game. But that game, he did more than enough to win it. His receivers, that was one of the weirder games. If you go back and look, for the professional people whose job titles include some reference to catching the football, and they could not catch it, was very strange. They certainly should have won. That's where people will point at the Baltimore game. I think that was the one right before.
Was that the Wednesday game?
Yeah, it was a weird game, and people said, well, that was when the Steelers got exposed. Maybe so, but the Steelers still should have beaten Washington if their guys would have caught the ball. If you really go back and pick that one apart, there's some crazy goal line stops and drops by Deontay Johnson. And even that was the game, I believe, when even Juju, who is usually shorthanded, was dropping passes. And then they ran the wheel route to the rookie running back, Anthony McFarland, which makes all the sense in the world to me when it was Bostic lined up. I had to sprint over to catch him. Like, well, of course, Seven's going to throw the ball in that direction. It's Bostic after all. And it should have been a touchdown, but the kid dropped it. But and then I do remember thinking like, oh, Jesus, when Alex Smith completed that ball, I don't remember even who caught it, but made a dynamite catch on it. I was like, we're going to lose.
Oh, I think was it Thomas? It might have been.
Might have been. Yeah, he had a nice game that day. But of course, yeah, I was surprised. But that really from Thanksgiving-ish on sort of popped nationally. Like, wow, Chase Young and company are really good. And the trick for Washington is, I don't know why the math works out this way, that if you have, like, I think Lamar Jackson, that kind of an offense thrives in October because more often than not, the Ravens are going to be more talented than who they're lined up from, more often than not. So you get to that gets you to 8 to 10 victories right there. And then you have to steal a couple along the way. But its problem is that I think it doesn't work against high-end defenses, what Lamar Jackson and the entire Ravens team's trying to do. The opposite is true with Washington. I think if you get them to the playoffs, and we saw that in the wild card round, they're scary, man. Like, for a 60-minute game, I don't want that pass rush. And I know it's anecdotal, but you remember what happened to Tom Brady when he went up against that Giants front and against that Eagles front. That's the thing. It's not like Nick Foles and Joe Flacco beat you. It's like, well, the pass rush is what killed Brady. He doesn't like that. And you almost saw Brady go down to it with the Maroon 4. Maroon 4. Wait, I don't know. Does it need the article in front of it or not? I have to clean that up. But Maroon 4 almost was his undoing in that one, in that wild card round. So it's super interesting. For a 1-year shot, and two, by the way, you mentioned Joe, I bring up Flacco and Nick Foles and those guys. Obviously, Ryan Fitzpatrick is not a long-term answer for the Washington football team. If he has a great season, running it back with him, it's like, oh, we'll always be in the playoff mix as long as we have Fitzmagic as our quarterback. That's not true. But there is evidence, and it's much more of like, puncher's chance. If you have Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes or Russell Wilson or Ben Roethlisberger in his prime and otherwise, you're going to be close to, if not in the playoffs, pretty much every year. But even in the 21st century, Joe Flacco, Brad Johnson, Nick Foles, and beyond have provided Jared Goff. Not that those guys are equivalent talents, but none of those guys are top, 6 or 8 quarterbacks in the league. There's enough evidence. Peyton Manning in 2015, who was not Peyton Manning anymore.
Rex Grossman.
Up old man. Rex Grossman. There's enough evidence that you can go into the season and feel like if things break right and our defense really dominates, we could make a special run. That's what you want. I've really become, the older I get, much more about journey over destination. I really I try to balance, like, when people are saying, the Steelers aren't going to win the Super Bowl, I'm like, all right, I'm enjoying them being 8-0, now 9-0, now 10-0, now 11-0. It's like, well, now they lost. They're not I didn't think they were going to go undefeated. They're in the playoffs. Like, this is what we need. We need stuff to look forward to. I think you have something to look forward to in 2021 and beyond, because you have that pass rush is mighty. And now in 2022, as soon as next year, if Fitzmagic moves on, let's assume he does, they're going to be every year. What have we learned now? Aaron Rodgers is belly aching. Russell Wilson is belly aching. Tom Brady moved from a dynasty to Florida a year ago. Jameis Winston a year from now could be available. Cam Newton's on the market a lot. There are quarterbacks in the pipeline every spring. You're going to get a QB, and you have the rest of the thing all figured out. You guys are now loaded up at receiver. The defense looks mighty. So I think it's an exciting time. I would guess the Cowboys win the division this year. The Giants are, who knows? But yes, I if I had to bet on it today, I would say I'll take the Cowboys. I think the Giants are interesting. Fitzmagic, his trick is, can he do it over 16? He has stretches. He's one of those guys who has stretches where you think he's the most unbeatable guy on the planet Earth. The problem is that he, over the course of his career, legitimately has not done it for the entire season. But if nothing else, it should be fun. The division didn't, obviously, it was a punchline last year. So, if you can scratch out 10 wins, which seems plausible to me, you'd have a shot in that one. But the other thing with the Cowboys is they didn't fix the defense. It wouldn't seem they're going to be even better defensively, but they're not. You don't look at the Cowboys roster right now and say, like, how could we compete? That's the other thing that's fun about being in your division right now.
Yeah. Do you think what % chance would you give it that Aaron Rodgers is starting in Green Bay week 1?
I am always one of these people who just assumes that things aren't going to, that it's not going to change. I'm naive about these things. Like, I'm always like, oh, these two don't like each other and there's no way to resolve this. And then, like, it really is something to be learned. Just ignore, certain politicians, whether you like them or not. The one thing that they do is, like, I'm just not going to pay attention to this. I'm not going to react. No matter how much you say I have to quit or I have to do it, I'm just not going to do anything, is what my response is going to be. And people will move on to something else and cooler heads will prevail. That's the chance that the Packers and Rodgers have of staying together. I think, though, like I say, I think Rodgers, I think the Broncos think they're getting Rodgers at least. And I think Rodgers is sincere about not wanting to be in Green Bay anymore. And I think Tom Brady started something here a year ago, much like LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh did in the NBA. I think that Tom Brady has opened up possibilities for some guys who want to control their last few years in the league. And I think Aaron Rodgers seems sincere. It's not like, okay, Aaron, we'll make a trade to get blank. Or like, oh, the Falcons are looking to trade Julio Jones. Okay, we'll do it. Will you stay then? Maybe something like that happened, but it seems more than that. It seems like he just doesn't want to be there. And so I think it's more likely that he is the Broncos quarterback than he is the Packers. So I would say third of a chance, 25%, 30% that he's back in Green Bay this year.
Do you think the West Coast thing is he only wants to win the West Coast? That's what I've heard from some people, and
That's what I hear, which makes sense. He's a human being. He's got his Hollywood fiance. He doesn't want to be in Charlotte, North Carolina, and flying across the she must be like, if you ever been in a long distance relationship, you're like when the one has to travel all the time, like that person gets upset. Like, why am I always the one who has to travel? Why don't you ever travel to me? That's the undoing of a relationship. Aaron, I'm sure, is a considerate lover, and therefore has said, like, Shailene, I will do my very best to be in the same time zone as you.
Yeah. Well, I always thought that he let Danica drive. So that was always my hot take about that.
Boy, that's an interesting thought, and I never considered that, but of course that's got to be true.
Yeah,
unless she's one of those
flies.
I do this all day. I wouldn't do anything but if that's her wish, then maybe he's again back to him being a considerate lover.
Yeah. And then one last question for you. Do you think he would have been moved had they not if they're not sold on Jordan Love, do they move him during the draft and take their choice of quarterback?
Another good question. I think, boy, that's a good question. I think that unless they know that they're not going to get Rodgers. So if they did that, it makes it clear we're definitely not keeping Aaron Rodgers. Then that signals to the league. And I don't know exactly what you lose in that. Like, we're going to end up trading him, but we're not going to. I wonder if that's a violation to basically announce, like, obviously we know we're going to trade him. We just can't do it yet. I wonder. I don't know if that's in violation of some, collusion or whatever rule. But I think that I think that that's I think that Jordan. No, I think they could, because then they really look like maroons. Then it seems like they have no idea what they're doing. Like, a year ago we thought this was the guy, but we were wrong about that, and so we're going to get rid of him already. Like, then what? How faithful could you stay to management? Yeah, you just chased off the best quarterback of all time, or one a guy in that conversation, and the guy who you thought was so good 12 months ago that he was going to replace him. Now you change your mind on that. Like, I think you would have to fire him you'd have to fire the front office for that then.
No, yeah. Well, Gutekunst has been trending more in the past week than it will ever.
Fun to say, if nothing else.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I thought apparently he's only been there 2 years, but that's an interesting. We'll see how that plays out. But do appreciate you taking the time to chat for a few minutes. How can people find the podcast and follow you on social media and keep up with you?
Oh, anywhere you find podcasts, track it down. Me and Cousin Sal going twice a week for you. The best bets and mirth mixed in there on extra points. And then -3 focuses entirely on the Northeast. So if you're an NFC East fan, an AFC North, AFC East fan, Eastern Conference NBA guy, East Division NHL guy, AL East, NL East, if that's your interest, then you want to listen to -3. Is how you check it out, and always a pleasure to see you, Pally.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. You win any money on prop bets in the draft? You don't let you parlay them.
Well, what I did long ago too was Trey Lance at 3. So I hit on that one. I said Najee Harris under 27.5, pick 27.5, hit on that one. What else? So I did all right with some of those draft props there.
Yeah.
Now I'm ready for the NHL playoffs. So that's what I'm looking at right now.
No, I wonder if anybody had the prop. Bears will select a running back over under number of toes, 5.5, and whichever way you went over. You hit.
I had that. So, I had that. I had that.
Yeah, it's unreal. Apparently, the other guy he was with when he was at Kansas had 1 foot with 5, 1 with 0, and I don't know who the hell's doing recruiting in Blacksburg, Virginia, but it's wild. But I do appreciate you taking the time to chat.
Sure thing. Anytime, pal.